My sister demanded I wear red to her all-white wedding as her maid of honor. My sister Jordan demanded I wear a bright red dress to her all-white themed wedding where literally every other person would be wearing white, because she's hated me since I was born and this was her ultimate humiliation. She announced it at the rehearsal dinner in front of 50 people. Everyone wears white except my maid of honor. She'll be in red, for contrast. She smiled at me like she was doing me a favor. Won't that look beautiful in photos? One pop of color? The photographer looked confused. Usually the bride wants unity in wedding photos. I want Lily to stand out, Jordan said. She's special. Special. The way she said it made everyone uncomfortable. My mother shifted in her seat. My father cleared his throat. But nobody said anything because nobody ever challenges Jordan. When I was 5, she cut my hair while I slept, because hers got tangled and had to be cut short. Couldn't have me with longer hair. When I got into honors classes, she told everyone I was in special education. Let that rumor run through school for months before a teacher corrected it. When I started my accounting firm, she told everyone I was a bookkeeper at H&R Block during tax season. When I bought my house, she said it was in a bad neighborhood. It's not. She just couldn't stand that I owned something. The wedding planning was her greatest performance yet. Made me organize everything as maid of honor but wouldn't let me make decisions. Book the flowers. Then canceled my order and picked different ones. Arranged the transportation. Then changed it all last minute. Planned the bachelorette party. Then complained the entire time that it wasn't good enough. But the dress thing was the worst. She waited until 2 days before the wedding to tell me about the red dress. After I'd already bought a white one like she'd instructed. After alterations were done. After she'd approved it. Red? I said at the rehearsal. You said white. You were very specific about white. I changed my mind. Red will photograph better. Her bridesmaids all smiled. They never liked me either. Jordan made sure of that. Told them stories about how difficult I was, how jealous, how I tried to sabotage her relationships. All lies, but they believed her. Everyone always believes Jordan. That night, I went to every store in town. Finally found a red cocktail dress at a consignment shop. Too short, too casual, but it was red. Bought it knowing Jordan would hate it. Knowing she'd make a scene. Knowing that was the point. The morning of the wedding, Jordan was glowing. Did you find your red dress? She asked sweetly while the makeup artist worked on her. I did. Can't wait to see it. You're going to look so notable. Like I was a circus act. I helped her into her dress. Did up every button while she talked about how perfect everything would be. How the photos would be in magazines. How everyone would remember this wedding. She was right about that part. The ceremony started. I walked down the aisle in my red dress. Could hear the whispers. Why was I in red? Why was I different? Some people took pictures, confused. I stood at the altar holding her bouquet while she married Tom, the surgeon she'd met at my company's healthcare mixer. The reception started and Jordan had one more surprise. A special toast she wanted me to give. Hadn't mentioned it before. My maid of honor has something to say, she announced, pulling me to the microphone. Tell everyone about our sisterhood, about all our memories. She wanted me to stand there in my red dress and talk about how wonderful she was, how lucky I was to be her sister, how perfect this day was. I took the microphone, looked at the crowd, at our parents, at Tom, who was now sweating. Jordan asked me to wear red today, I started. Said it was for contrast, to make me stand out. People nodded, still confused. She's always been good at making me stand out. When we were kids, she'd point out everything different about me, everything wrong, everything that made me less than her. Jordan's smile froze. But today, standing out helps me see things clearly. Like how Tom looks nervous, like how he keeps checking his phone, like how there's lipstick on his collar that isn't Jordan's shade. The room went silent. Tom's hand went to his collar. Funny thing about being the sister nobody notices, I continued. You see everything. Like Tom at the bachelor party last night. Not his bachelor party. He was at the hotel bar. With Jordan's best friend Ashley. The one who called in sick today. Stomach bug, right? Must have caught it from Tom. Jordan turned to Tom. His face was white. The microphone slipped from my fingers and hit the floor with a loud thud that echoed through the silent ballroom. Jordan's face went from frozen smile to pure rage in about 2 seconds. She lunged toward Tom, her white dress swishing around her legs, the train catching on a chair. Tom backed away from the head table so fast his chair tipped over behind him. His face had gone from white to gray, and his hand was still pressed against his collar like he could hide the lipstick stain if he just covered it hard enough. All around the ballroom, guests pulled out their phones. I could see the screens lighting up as people started recording. Some were holding their phones up high to get a better angle. Others were texting frantically, probably telling people who weren't here what was happening. The photographer stood frozen with her camera hanging from her neck, mouth open. Jordan reached Tom and grabbed his arm hard enough that I could see her knuckles go white even from where I stood. Her voice came out as a scream that made several people near the head table flinch. She demanded to know if it was true, if he'd really been with Ashley. her voice cracking on Ashley's name. The rage in her tone mixed with something that sounded like she might cry. Tom stammered something about a misunderstanding, about me getting it wrong, about how things weren't what they looked like, but his hand never moved from his collar. Everyone could see the lipstick stain now, because he'd drawn attention to it by trying to hide it. The shade was clearly visible against his white shirt. Dark red, almost burgundy. Nothing like the pale pink Jordan wore. His words tumbled over each other in panic, half-sentences that didn't connect, excuses that made no sense. I stood frozen at the microphone watching my sister's perfect wedding fall apart in real time. Part of me wanted to look away, but I couldn't stop staring. Jordan's carefully styled hair was starting to come loose. Her makeup was smudging as tears formed in her eyes. The perfect bride image was cracking right in front of 50 witnesses. Amy, one of Jordan's bridesmaids, suddenly appeared next to me and grabbed my arm. Her fingers dug into my skin hard enough to hurt. She leaned in close and hissed that I'd ruined everything. Called me a vindictive monster who couldn't stand to see Jordan happy. Said I was jealous and petty and cruel. Her breath was hot against my ear and smelled like champagne. I pulled my arm away and took a step back. Amy's face was red with anger, her own carefully applied makeup starting to run from sweat. The other bridesmaids were clustered near the head table, some crying, some just staring. None of them moved to help Jordan. They all looked shocked and confused and scared. My mother suddenly rushed past me toward Jordan. She pushed through the crowd of guests who were all standing now, phones still out, everyone talking at once. The noise level in the room had gone from dead silent to roaring in about 30 seconds. My father appeared in front of me with an expression I'd never seen before. His face was red and his jaw was clenched tight. The look he gave me was somewhere between fury and disappointment, maybe leaning more toward fury. He told me to leave immediately. Said I'd embarrassed the entire family. Said I'd destroyed my sister's wedding day. His voice was low but shaking with anger. I'd never heard him sound like that before. He pointed toward the exit like I might not know where it was. Behind him, I could see my mother trying to pull Jordan away from Tom. Jordan was still screaming, her voice getting higher and more hysterical. Tom was backing toward the wall, hands up like he was surrendering. Some of the groomsmen started moving toward them, probably trying to figure out if they should intervene. I grabbed my small purse from under my chair at the head table. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it twice. I walked toward the ballroom exit with my head high even though my legs felt weak, even though I could feel everyone staring at me, even though the red dress suddenly felt like it was burning against my skin. Behind me, I heard Jordan sobbing, these huge, gasping sobs that made my chest tight. Tom's voice rose above the crowd noise, trying to explain, his words tumbling over each other in panic. He kept saying it wasn't what it looked like, that he could explain, that everyone needed to calm down. Nobody was calming down. I pushed through the ballroom doors and they swung shut behind me, muffling the chaos. The hotel hallway was quiet and empty, and my heels clicked loud on the marble floor. I made it to the parking lot before my hands started shaking, so hard I had to lean against my car. I dropped my keys twice trying to unlock the door. Finally got inside and just sat there. The parking lot was well lit and I could see the hotel entrance from where I'd parked. I sat there for 20 minutes watching guests stream out. They came in confused clusters, groups of 3 or 4 people all talking at once. Some were on their phones, probably calling people to tell them what happened. Others were arguing, gesturing wildly with their hands. A few were actually laughing, like they'd just witnessed the best entertainment of their lives, which I guess they had. One older couple walked past my car and I heard the woman say something about always knowing Tom was trouble. Her husband shushed her, but he was smiling. 2 of the groomsmen came out and stood near the entrance smoking, their ties loosened, jackets off. They kept shaking their heads and looking back at the hotel like they couldn't believe what just happened. My phone started buzzing in my purse, text after text, call after call. The vibrations were constant, didn't stop. I pulled it out and saw my mother's name, my father's name, numbers I didn't recognize, names of relatives and family friends. I turned the phone completely off and dropped it back in my purse. Started my car and drove home to my house, my hands still shaking on the steering wheel. The satisfaction I'd expected to feel was there, this warm rush in my chest when I thought about Tom's face going white, about Jordan's perfect wedding falling apart. But it was mixed with something heavier that sat in my stomach like a rock, something I didn't want to examine yet. I spent the rest of the night sitting on my couch in the red dress, replaying the moment over and over, the look on Jordan's face when I said Tom's name, the way her smile had frozen, the way Tom's hand had flown to his collar, the sound of the microphone hitting the floor. Part of me felt guilty for the public humiliation, for doing it in front of 50 people, for not finding a private way to tell her. But a bigger part of me remembered every single time she'd humiliated me. The haircutting, the special education rumor, diminishing my business, making me wear red while everyone else wore white. Every small cruelty over 30 years. That part felt absolutely no regret. I finally changed out of the dress around midnight and threw it in the back of my closet. Never wanted to see it again. Crawled into bed but couldn't sleep. Just stared at the ceiling, replaying everything. The next morning, I turned my phone back on. 63 missed calls. Over 100 text messages. The notifications kept coming as the phone loaded everything that had come in overnight. Most of the messages were from family members. My aunt called me a spiteful bitch. My uncle said I was jealous and always had been. My cousin said I'd gone too far. On, variations of the same theme. But a few messages were different. Some people asking if what I'd said was actually true about Tom and Ashley. Asking for details. Asking how I knew. I ignored all of them and made coffee with shaking hands. Finally listened to one voicemail from my mother. Her voice was cold in a way I'd never heard before. She said Jordan had locked herself in the bridal suite and wouldn't come out. Wouldn't talk to anyone, wouldn't eat. Just crying and screaming at anyone who knocked on the door. My mother said I'd destroyed my sister's life out of pure jealousy. Said I was no longer welcome at family gatherings until I apologized. Said she was ashamed to call me her daughter. The voicemail ended with a click. I deleted the voicemail and saw another one from my father. Pressed play. His voice was quieter than my mother's. Calmer. That made it worse somehow. He said he was disappointed in me. Not angry. Disappointed. He asked how I could be so cruel to my own sister on her wedding day. How I could air private family matters in front of 50 people. Whether I'd considered that I might be wrong about what I saw. That maybe I misunderstood the situation with Tom and Ashley. That I'd destroyed Jordan's happiness based on assumptions. The message ended and I sat there staring at my phone. My hands were still shaking. I deleted that voicemail too and turned my phone face down on the couch. Got up and went to the kitchen. Made coffee even though my stomach felt tight and wrong. Measured the grounds. Filled the water. Watched it drip into the pot. Normal actions that felt strange after everything that happened. I poured a cup and sat at my kitchen table. Finally let myself think about what I'd done. Really think about it. Not just the satisfaction of watching Jordan's perfect day fall apart, but the actual consequences. My accounting firm was small. Successful, but small. I had maybe 30 regular clients. Several of them were friends with my parents. Played golf with my father. Had lunch with my mother. They'd hear about this. Probably already had heard about it. Would they think I was unstable? Unprofessional? Someone who made scenes and caused drama? I took a sip of coffee and it burned my tongue. My phone buzzed on the couch in the living room. Again and again. More texts, more calls. I ignored them all. Sat there thinking about Mrs. Wilson who'd been with me since I started the firm. Her daughter was friends with Jordan. About Mr. Anderson who referred 3 new clients to me last month. He and my father went to the same church. About the Hendersons who trusted me with their retirement planning. They'd been at the wedding. Sat in the 3rd row. Watched me drop that microphone and walk out. The coffee got cold while I sat there. My phone kept buzzing. I didn't move to check it. Just stared at the wall and thought about everything I might lose. Everything I'd built. My business. My reputation. My independence from my family. All of it at risk now because I couldn't keep my mouth shut for one more day. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it like all the others. But something made me pick it up and look. The message said this was Kieran from the hotel bar. That he'd served Tom and Ashley multiple drinks the night before the wedding. That they were definitely together. Very cozy. Leaning into each other. Touching. That if I needed someone to confirm what I saw, he was willing to do that. That what Tom did was wrong and Jordan deserved to know I read the message 3 times. Saved his number in my contacts. Felt something warm spread through my chest. Vindication. Relief. Proof that I wasn't crazy or jealous or making things up. Tom really was cheating. Ashley really was involved. I'd seen exactly what I thought I'd seen. I wasn't the villain here. Tom was. I texted Kieran back thanking him. Told him I might need him to confirm things if people kept saying I was lying. He responded immediately saying he'd tell anyone who asked. That he saw everything. That Tom had his hand on Ashley's leg. That they'd kissed when they thought nobody was watching. That they'd left together around midnight. I sat back in my chair holding my phone. Tom was absolutely cheating. Ashley was absolutely involved. Jordan needed to know before she fully committed her life to him. Before they bought a house together. Had kids. Built a whole future on his lies. I did the right thing. Maybe not the right way, but the right thing. By evening, my phone buzzed with another text. This one from my cousin Rachel. She said Tom finally admitted everything to Jordan. After hours of denial. After swearing up and down that I was lying. That I'd always been jealous of Jordan. That I made the whole thing up to ruin her wedding. He finally broke down and confessed. Told Jordan that he and Ashley had been seeing each other for 3 months. That it started at my company's healthcare mixer where they first met. That he was planning to end it after the wedding. That it didn't mean anything that he loved Jordan. That Ashley meant nothing to him. Rachel said Jordan was destroyed. Absolutely destroyed. But at least she knew the truth now. At least she hadn't married him without knowing. I texted back asking how Jordan was doing. Rachel said she'd locked herself in the bridal suite, wouldn't talk to anyone. Just screaming and crying. That Tom was trying to get her to open the door, but she kept throwing things at it. That the hotel manager was getting involved because other guests were complaining about the noise. Then Rachel sent another text. Said Jordan threw her wedding ring at Tom. Told him to get out of the bridal suite. That she never wanted to see him again. That everything between them was over. The hotel had to move Tom to a different room on another floor. And Ashley apparently left town immediately after the ceremony. Packed up and drove to her parents' house 3 hours away. She knew I'd expose them. Knew everyone would be talking about it. Couldn't face Jordan or anyone else. I put my phone down and sat in the quiet of my house. Felt tired suddenly. Exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. Everything I'd said at the wedding was true. Tom admitted it. Kieran confirmed it. But Jordan was still destroyed. My family still hated me. And I still had to figure out how to deal with the fallout. 2 days passed. I didn't leave my house, didn't answer calls, just worked on client files and tried not to think about everything. Then my mother called. Not a voicemail this time. An actual call. I stared at her name on the screen for 3 rings before answering. She didn't say hello. Just started talking. Said Jordan wanted to know how I found out about Tom and Ashley. Whether I'd been spying on them. Following Tom around. How long I'd known without saying anything. Whether I'd been planning to ruin the wedding all along. I took a breath and explained calmly. Told her I saw them together at the hotel bar the night before by pure chance. That I was dropping off Jordan's emergency makeup kit she'd forgotten at the rehearsal dinner. That I walked past the bar and saw them sitting together, Tom's hand on Ashley's thigh. The way they were leaning into each other. Whispering. Laughing. The lipstick on his collar that clearly wasn't Jordan's shade. That I watched for maybe 2 minutes before they noticed me and pulled apart. That I left immediately and spent the whole night trying to decide what to do. My mother went quiet for a long moment. Then she said Tom had confirmed every detail I described, every single thing. The bar, the drinks, Ashley, the touching, the lipstick, all of it. Her tone shifted slightly. Still cold but less sharp, less certain. Like maybe she was starting to realize I'd been telling the truth all along. I asked her point blank if she really would have preferred I let Jordan marry Tom without knowing he was cheating on her. She stammered something about handling it privately. About family dignity. About not making scenes at weddings. About how there were better ways to tell Jordan. More appropriate times. I asked her when exactly would have been appropriate. Before the ceremony when Jordan was surrounded by bridesmaids and photographers? During the ceremony in front of the priest? After the honeymoon when they were already legally married? She didn't have an answer for that. 3 days passed before my phone rang with Jordan's name on the screen. Not my mother calling on her behalf. Not a text. An actual call from my sister for the first time in years. I stared at it for 2 rings before answering. Her voice sounded rough when she spoke, like she'd been crying for days straight. She asked me why I decided to humiliate her in front of 50 people instead of pulling her aside before the ceremony. Why I chose the most public moment possible to destroy her wedding. I took a breath and told her the truth. Said I tried to find her before the ceremony, but she was surrounded by bridesmaids taking photos and doing last-minute dress adjustments. That every time I got close, someone pulled her away for another picture or touch-up. That I didn't have a single moment alone with her all morning. She went quiet on the other end, but I kept talking. Told her that by the time the reception started and she shoved that microphone in my face, I was so angry about the red dress setup that I just snapped. That watching her smile while making me stand out like a circus performer made something break inside me. I admitted that part of the public reveal was about hurting her back. About making her feel the way she'd made me feel for 30 years. About finally standing up instead of taking it quietly like I always had before Jordan stayed silent for a long time after I finished. Then she said something that made me actually laugh out loud. Said the red dress was meant to make me stand out as special. That she wanted me to be memorable in the photos. That she thought it would look beautiful. I laughed because it was such an obvious lie. Such a clear attempt to rewrite what happened into something noble instead of cruel. She got defensive immediately, insisting she really did think the contrast would photograph well, that she wasn't trying to humiliate me at all. I cut her off and started listing everything. Reminded her about cutting my hair when we were 5 because hers got cut short. About telling everyone I was in special education when I made honors classes. About calling my accounting firm a seasonal tax job. About saying my house was in a bad neighborhood when it wasn't. About every single time she made me feel small or wrong or less than her. She tried to interrupt, but I kept going. Years of resentment pouring out in sentences that felt both terrible and necessary. Every memory I'd been holding on to. Every hurt she'd caused. Every lie she'd told about me. All of it came out in a rush that I couldn't have stopped even if I wanted to. Jordan started crying somewhere in the middle of my list. Then she hung up on me without saying anything else. I sat there holding my silent phone and felt lighter than I had in days. Everything I needed to say was finally said. Whether she accepted it or believed it or understood it didn't matter anymore. I'd stood up for myself completely instead of swallowing it down like usual. That evening, my father called. His voice was careful when he asked me to consider Jordan's feelings. To remember she was going through a devastating breakup and didn't need more pain right now. I pointed out that Jordan never considered my feelings once in 30 years. That she built her entire identity on making me feel inferior. He went quiet and didn't have a response to that. Just said he'd talk to me later and hung up. A week after the wedding, I stopped at the coffee shop near my office. Eugene was there waiting for his order. Amy's husband, who'd been at the wedding. He saw me and came over, speaking quietly so other customers wouldn't hear. Said that half the guests thought what I did was wrong, that I should have handled it privately. But the other half were actually glad someone finally called out Tom's behavior. He leaned in closer and mentioned that rumors about Tom had been circulating for months. Stories about him being inappropriate with younger women at the hospital. About questionable behavior at medical conferences. About a pattern nobody wanted to acknowledge because he was a respected surgeon. Eugene said some people were relieved someone finally exposed him publicly, where he couldn't deny it, or smooth it over. Then Eugene brought up Ashley. Said she'd been posting cryptic messages on social media about being blamed for things that weren't entirely her fault, about situations being more complicated than they seemed. I pulled out my phone right there and looked at her profile. Saw posts suggesting Tom pursued her aggressively, that she tried to end things multiple times, that people didn't understand the full story before judging her. I felt something twist in my stomach for the first time since the wedding, a doubt I hadn't let myself consider before. Tom was a surgeon with status and money and charm. Ashley was much younger and still building her career. Maybe the power dynamic was more problematic than I realized when I saw them together. Maybe I'd cast her as the villain when the situation was more complicated. I thanked Eugene and left the coffee shop feeling unsettled. Pulled up Kieran's number from my contacts and called him, asked for more details about what he observed at the hotel bar that night. He remembered it clearly. Said Tom was definitely the one initiating everything. Ordering drinks. Touching Ashley's arm and leg. Keeping her there even when she checked her phone nervously multiple times. That she looked uncomfortable, but Tom kept talking and laughing and ordering more drinks. Kieran said he almost intervened because Ashley seemed like she wanted to leave but didn't know how to without being rude. I thanked Kieran for the information and hung up, staring at my phone for a long time. The picture I'd painted in my head was shifting. Ashley wasn't just some homewrecker who decided to steal my sister's fiancé. She was someone Tom targeted and pursued. Someone who tried to leave but got pressured to stay. Yet I still thought she should have told Jordan the truth. But I understood now that she was probably scared of Tom's reaction. Maybe she was scared of losing her job since Tom had connections at the hospital where she worked as a medical assistant. The power difference between a surgeon and a medical assistant was huge. Tom could have ruined her career with a few phone calls to the right people. 10 days after the wedding, my phone rang while I was reviewing quarterly reports for a small business client. The name on the screen was Alice Henderson, who'd been with my firm for 3 years. She was friends with my mother through their book club. I answered professionally, expecting questions about her accounts. Instead, Alice asked if the family situation would affect my ability to handle her finances properly. I assured her it wouldn't, that my personal life was completely separate from my professional work. She made a non-committal sound and said she'd think about it. After we hung up, I sat at my desk feeling cold. My dramatic toast at Jordan's wedding was starting to affect my business. People were questioning whether I was stable enough to manage their money. 2 days later, another client called with similar concerns. Then a third client the day after that. Both mentioned hearing about what happened at the wedding. Both asked careful questions about my judgment and discretion. I gave them the same reassurances I'd given Alice, but I could hear the doubt in their voices. They were wondering if someone who would blow up her sister's wedding in front of 50 people might also be prone to other dramatic outbursts. What if I got mad at a client and exposed their financial information? What if I couldn't be trusted to keep things private? The questions weren't said out loud, but I heard them anyway. My public revelation was creating a reputation problem I hadn't considered when I grabbed that microphone. I scheduled a meeting with Maxine, my business mentor who'd helped me start my accounting firm 5 years ago. We met at her office, which was decorated with wedding photos from her photography business. She poured us both coffee and got straight to the point. She'd been the photographer at Jordan's wedding and had witnessed everything. The toast, the revelation, Jordan's breakdown, the chaos afterward. Maxine was sympathetic about my situation with Jordan, understood why I'd been angry. But she warned me that small business owners can't afford to look unprofessional. Clients need to trust that you're stable and discreet. They need to believe you'll keep their information private and won't let personal drama interfere with their accounts. Right now, people in town were talking about what I did, and not all of them were on my side. Maxine suggested I might want to reach out to Jordan and try to smooth things over publicly. She wasn't saying I needed to reconcile privately or pretend everything was fine between us. But maybe a public statement that we were working through family issues would help stop the gossip and reassure my clients. She pointed out that ongoing family drama makes clients nervous. They start wondering if you're too distracted to handle their accounts properly. They worry about your judgment. Maxine showed me her business social media page and how she carefully maintained a professional image. Nothing controversial, nothing that would make clients uncomfortable. She'd been doing this for 20 years and knew how reputation worked in a small city where everyone knew everyone else. I left Maxine's office feeling frustrated because her advice felt like I was asked to apologize for telling the truth. Tom had been cheating on Jordan. Ashley had been involved. Those were facts, not opinions. Why should I have to smooth things over publicly when I'd done Jordan a favor by exposing Tom before she married him? But over the next week, 2 more clients left my firm. Both cited wanting to avoid drama as their reason. One of them had been with me since I started the business. I watched my client list shrink and realized the consequences of my actions were expanding beyond what I'd expected. The satisfaction of exposing Tom was costing me professionally in ways I hadn't considered when I grabbed that microphone at the reception. 3 weeks after the wedding, I got an email from Ashley. The subject line said, "Can we talk?" And the message was carefully worded. She asked if we could meet to discuss what happened. She wanted to explain her side of things and said she'd been dealing with a lot of guilt and confusion. She understood if I didn't want to see her, but she hoped I'd give her a chance to tell her story. I read the email 3 times, feeling conflicted. Part of me was still angry at Ashley for getting involved with Tom in the first place. But another part was curious about her perspective after what Kieran had told me about Tom being the one who initiated everything. I typed out a response agreeing to meet at a coffee shop across town, somewhere neutral where we wouldn't run into people we knew. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived. Ashley showed up 5 minutes later looking completely different from the polished person I remembered from Jordan's friend group. She had dark circles under her eyes and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun. Her clothes were wrinkled like she'd grabbed them off the floor. She ordered a coffee with shaking hands and sat down across from me at a corner table. We stared at each other for a moment before she started talking. Her voice was quiet and tired. She thanked me for agreeing to meet and said she knew I probably hated her. She wanted me to understand what really happened between her and Tom. Ashley explained that Tom pursued her hard after they met at my healthcare mixer. He found her on social media and started messaging her constantly. Compliments, jokes, asking her to coffee. She tried to brush him off at first because she knew he was with Jordan, but Tom was persistent. He told her that his relationship with Jordan was mostly for show, that they had an understanding about seeing other people. He said Jordan was more interested in the wedding than in him, that they were basically roommates who got along well enough to plan a life together. Ashley admitted she was stupid to believe him. She knew it sounded like a typical cheating excuse, but Tom was convincing and charming, and she was lonely after a bad breakup. She let herself get pulled in. Then she tried to end things multiple times when she started feeling guilty, but Tom would get angry or sad or make promises about leaving Jordan after the wedding. Ashley pulled out her phone and showed me text messages from Tom. Hundreds of them. I scrolled through and saw exactly what she described: Tom pressuring her to meet up. Tom getting angry when she said she needed space. Tom making promises about being together properly once he figured things out with Jordan. Tom manipulating her emotions with messages about how much he needed her, how she was the only person who understood him. The messages made me feel sick. This wasn't just an affair between 2 people who were equally responsible. This was Tom systematically manipulating someone younger and less powerful than him. I looked at Ashley and saw her differently than I had before. She wasn't a villain. She was another person Tom had used for his own benefit. The real villain was Tom, who'd manipulated both Ashley and Jordan while pretending to be a good guy. Ashley put her phone away and looked down at her coffee cup. She told me she'd been trying to reach Jordan for weeks now, sending texts and emails and even showing up at my parents' house once. Nothing worked. Jordan blocked her number and refused to open the door. She'd lost most of her friend group too because everyone chose sides and most people chose Jordan's side. Ashley's voice got quiet when she said she understood why people picked Jordan, that she deserved to lose those friendships after what she did. Then she asked me a question I didn't expect. She wanted to know if I thought Jordan would ever forgive her. I sat there for a minute not knowing what to say. The honest answer was I had no idea, because I didn't really know my sister at all, not in any real way. I told Ashley I couldn't answer that Jordan and I weren't close enough for me to predict what she'd do. Ashley nodded like she expected that response. She thanked me for meeting with her and said she hoped someday both Jordan and I could move past what Tom did to us. She left the coffee shop first, and I sat there alone finishing my drink. I drove home feeling completely mixed up about everything. Tom was clearly the bad guy who manipulated both Ashley and Jordan. But I was the one who blew everything up in front of 50 people without understanding how complicated the situation actually was. Ashley wasn't some evil person trying to steal her friend's man. She was someone younger and less powerful who got pulled into Tom's lies and manipulation. And Jordan, despite all the horrible things she'd done to me over the years, didn't deserve to find out about her husband's cheating at her own wedding reception. I kept thinking about the look on her face when I said Tom's name into that microphone, the way her whole body went stiff, the way she turned to look at him with her white dress swishing around her legs. I'd wanted to hurt her back for the red dress thing and for 30 years of being treated like garbage, and I definitely succeeded in hurting her. But now I wasn't sure that success felt as good as I thought it would. A month went by without any contact from my family. My parents didn't call or text. Jordan obviously didn't reach out. I went to work every day at my accounting firm and came home to my house and tried not to think about the wedding. Then my mother called and asked if I wanted to have lunch with her, just the two of us. Her voice sounded different on the phone. Less cold than it had been in her previous messages. I agreed to meet her at a restaurant downtown. When I got there, she was already sitting at a table by the window. I almost didn't recognize her at first because she looked so much older than I remembered. Her face had new lines around her eyes and mouth. Her hair seemed grayer. She looked tired in a way that went deeper than just not sleeping well. The kind of tired that comes from dealing with really hard stuff for a long time. We ordered food and sat there in awkward silence for a few minutes. Then my mother started talking. She told me that Jordan had been staying with them since the wedding. She wasn't eating much, just picking at food and leaving most of it on her plate. She'd stopped going to work, and her boss was getting concerned about her taking so much time off. She spent most days in her old bedroom with the door closed, not talking to anyone about what happened. My mother's voice got harder when she asked me her next question. She wanted to know if I was satisfied with how things turned out, if destroying Jordan's wedding was worth whatever point I was trying to make. The way she said it made me feel like a kid again, like I was the problem child who always caused trouble. I put down my fork and looked at my mother. I told her I didn't destroy Jordan's wedding. Tom destroyed it by cheating on her. And Jordan helped destroy it by treating me like trash for 30 years. My mother's face did this little flinch thing when I said that. But she didn't argue with me or tell me I was wrong. She just sat there looking at her plate. And that's when I understood something. She knew I was right even if she couldn't say it out loud. She knew Jordan had treated me badly. She knew she and my father had let it happen. We ate in silence for a while. Then my mother said something I never expected to hear from her. She said that maybe she and my father had favored Jordan when we were growing up. She didn't say sorry exactly, but she admitted they made mistakes in how they handled the relationship between us. And those mistakes created a lot of the anger that came out at the wedding. I just stared at her because in 30 years she'd never acknowledged anything like that before. It was always Jordan this and Jordan that. Always me being told to be understanding, to give Jordan space, to not make things difficult. I asked her why they favored Jordan. What made her more special or more deserving of their attention and love? My mother struggled to answer. She moved her food around on her plate and didn't look at me for a long time. When she did talk, she said Jordan was their first child, and they were young parents who didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know how to split their attention between two daughters who had really different personalities. She said it like that explained everything. Like being the first kid was a good enough reason to get all the support while the second kid got nothing. Then my mother told me something I never knew. She said Jordan had really bad anxiety when she was little. Like, serious anxiety that needed therapy and sometimes medicine. I sat there shocked because nobody had ever mentioned this to me before. My mother explained that Jordan's need to control everything and be perfect all the time came from deep fear of not being good enough. And the way she treated me was partly about dealing with her own worries and fears. She made me feel small because she felt small inside. I listened to all this and felt something shift in my chest. It didn't excuse what Jordan did to me. It didn't make the hair cutting or the rumors or the constant put-downs. Okay. But it made me see her as more complicated than just the golden child who enjoyed making my life miserable. She was struggling with her own problems that our parents didn't handle well, and I was collateral damage in her attempts to feel better about herself. My mother reached across the table but didn't quite touch my hand. She asked if I would be willing to talk to Jordan with a family therapist there to help. To try to work through some of the problems between us, I didn't answer right away. Because part of me wanted to say no. Wanted to keep the distance I'd finally created. But another part of me recognized something important. All the anger I'd been carrying around hadn't actually brought me any peace. Blowing up Jordan's wedding hadn't fixed anything inside me. I told my mother I'd think about it. She nodded and we finished our lunch talking about small things that didn't matter, both of us avoiding the bigger conversation we'd just had. 5 weeks passed and I fell into a routine of work and avoiding family events. Eugene called me one Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing tax documents for a client. He asked if I had a minute to talk about the wedding situation. I said sure, and he told me something I didn't expect. Several guests had reached out to him privately saying they respected what I did. They said someone needed to stop Tom from trapping Jordan in a marriage built on lies. My timing was dramatic, but it protected my sister from making a huge mistake. I sat there holding my phone not knowing what to say because I'd spent weeks assuming everyone thought I was a horrible person. Eugene kept talking and mentioned that Tom's reputation at the hospital had taken a serious hit. Colleagues were questioning his character and judgment. Some of his patients requested different surgeons because they felt uncomfortable with his personal behavior, even though it had nothing to do with his medical skills. Eugene said the hospital administration was watching the situation closely. Then he told me something that made my chest feel tight. Jordan had started therapy and was working through issues way beyond just the failed wedding. She was talking about our childhood and her treatment of me, beginning to recognize patterns she wasn't aware of before. I thanked Eugene for calling and sat at my desk for a long time after we hung up. A week later, my phone buzzed with a text from Jordan. The message was short and formal, asking if I was willing to meet with her and a therapist. She said she understood if I wasn't ready, but she hoped I would consider it. No anger in the text. No defensiveness. Just a simple request that felt different from anything she'd ever sent me before. I stared at the message for 2 days before responding yes. The therapy office was in a boring medical building downtown with beige walls and uncomfortable chairs in the waiting room. Jordan arrived 5 minutes after me wearing jeans and a sweater with her hair pulled back. No makeup. She looked smaller somehow. We sat on opposite ends of a couch while the therapist introduced herself and explained how the session would work. Both of us sat stiffly, avoiding eye contact like strangers forced to share space. The therapist asked us each to describe our experience of growing up together. Jordan went first, and I listened to her talk about feeling intense pressure to be perfect, to make our parents proud, to prove she was worth their attention and love. She said she took out her anxiety on me because I seemed naturally confident and capable without even trying. That made her feel like she wasn't good enough. I wanted to interrupt and say that was ridiculous because she was always the favorite, but I kept quiet. When it was my turn, I described feeling invisible and small, like nothing I did mattered because Jordan was always the center of everything. I explained that her constant put-downs made me doubt myself for years. Building my business and buying my house were partly about proving I had value despite her treatment. My voice cracked when I talked about the haircutting incident and how scared I was waking up to find chunks of my hair gone. Jordan started crying first. Then I was crying too. The therapist handed us tissues and said something about how we both experienced the same family in completely different ways. How our parents' mistakes created problems between us that we took out on each other instead of addressing the real source. She said we were both victims of poor parenting in different ways. That hit something in my chest that I didn't want to acknowledge. Jordan looked at me with red eyes and apologized for the red dress. For years of making me feel small. She admitted she was trying to control me because she felt so out of control in her own life. I apologized for the public humiliation at her wedding. For choosing the cruelest possible way to reveal information she needed to know. We both sat there crying and exhausted like we'd run a marathon. The therapist scheduled another session for the following week. 2 months after the wedding, Jordan and I met for coffee without the therapist there. We picked a place neither of us had been to before, so it felt neutral. She ordered a latte and I got black coffee, and we sat at a corner table not knowing how to start a conversation. Everything we said felt awkward and forced because we didn't have our usual patterns of conflict to fall back on. She asked about my business and I asked about her job. Small talk that felt strange coming from us. But we were both trying to build something different, even though we had no idea what that something was supposed to look like. Jordan finally broke the silence by setting down her latte and looking directly at me for the first time since we sat down. She said she needed to tell me something that had been eating at her for weeks. She admitted that despite how devastating and humiliating my wedding toast was, she was grateful I exposed Tom before she actually married him. Her voice got quiet when she explained that after everything fell apart, she started digging into Tom's life and found evidence of other affairs. Ashley wasn't his first. There was a nurse at the hospital 6 months earlier, a pharmaceutical rep before that. Tom had been cheating on her throughout their entire relationship, and she never suspected anything because she was too focused on planning the perfect wedding. I sat there holding my coffee cup and processing this information. Part of me wanted to say I told you so, but I managed to keep my mouth shut. Jordan looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Like all the confidence and superiority had drained out and left behind someone who was just tired and hurt. I pulled out my phone and showed her the text messages Ashley had sent me. The screenshots revealed Tom's manipulation pattern clearly. How he pursued Ashley aggressively. How he lied about his relationship with Jordan. How he pressured Ashley when she tried to end things. Jordan read through every message with her jaw tight and her hands shaking slightly. When she finished, she was angry all over again, but in a different way. She said knowing that Ashley was manipulated too somehow made the betrayal feel less personal. It wasn't about Jordan not being good enough or Ashley being a better choice. It was about Tom being a predator who targeted vulnerable women and lied to everyone. We sat there for another hour talking about Tom's pattern and how neither of us saw it coming. Eventually, the conversation shifted to us and what came next. I suggested we try having dinner together once a month to see if we could rebuild some kind of relationship. Jordan agreed immediately, but added that we needed to be realistic about expectations. She said rebuilding would probably take years and might never result in the close sisterhood either of us wished we could have. Too much damage had been done over too many years. Some things can't be fully repaired no matter how hard you try. I appreciated her honesty about that. We weren't going to pretend everything was fine now just because we'd had one therapy session and one coffee date. 3 months after the wedding, I was sitting at my desk working through client tax returns when my phone buzzed with a text from Jordan. She'd sent a photo of herself sitting in a therapy office with our mother on one side and our father on the other. All three of them looked uncomfortable but determined. The message below the photo said, "Thanks for forcing us all to deal with our shit. Worst maid of honor ever, but maybe the sister I actually needed." I smiled at my phone and felt something shift in my chest. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to enable their dysfunction, even when it destroys the illusion of perfection everyone worked so hard to maintain.